Well, though it may not be the most technically accurate Bible translation available to us anymore, I do love the King James Bible translation of John 14:2. In my Father's house there are many mansions. I love this turn of phrase because Jesus describes a reality that's almost beyond comprehension. It's as if in his Father's house, each door opens to a mansion that's bigger than the house around it. It's kind of like on that British science fiction show Doctor Who, in which the Doctor travels through time and space in a ship that, from the outside, is the size of a telephone booth. It's bigger on the inside, he often explains. So while there are newer translations that go something like, in my Father's house there are many dwelling places, some of the mystery is lost with those words, even if I could be persuaded that they are more accurate. In the King James Version, the alternate reality that Jesus points to is much more intriguing. In my Father's house there are many mansions. He tells his disciples these words because he knows his time is growing short. He says these words on the night of his arrest. He wants his disciples to see beyond what is happening right in front of their faces. He wants them to have this vision of a place where he is going to prepare a place for them, where there is room for everybody. It's important from time to time to look beyond what's happening immediately in front of us. I think that's often true these days. No matter what we've lost or been required to give up these days, all to slow the spread of this virus, we can look beyond our present circumstances and remember that God promises to gather all of us together again. In our Father's house, there is room for everybody. There is room for you. There is room for me. We will be together again, gathered around the Lord's table, sharing in his meal. This is the promise for us to keep in mind. It's the promise Jesus wanted his disciples to keep in mind as he knew a rough time was coming for him and for them. Jesus wanted them to be able to look beyond the events of his arrest and crucifixion. He wanted them to look beyond and to find their hope there in the beyond. But Jesus is funny. He also wants the disciples to pay attention to what's right in front of them. He doesn't want them to only look to the heavens and to hope in what God has promised. He wants them to do that, for sure, but he also wants them to pay attention to what's happening right there in their midst. We know this because when Philip says, "Show us the Father," Jesus answers, "Have I been with you all this time, and you still do not know me?" Martin Luther, commenting on Philip's question, notes that Philip is ignoring Christ who is conversing with him, but gives wings to his thoughts and soars into the clouds. Philip imagines that God is way up there somewhere. He's looking there with his hopes. And in doing so, he's looking past Jesus. So Jesus calls his disciples to do both of these things. Keep your heads held high, chin up, remember the promises that are beyond our present circumstances. And notice where Jesus is already present, where God is already at work with you, present with you, and with your community. Don't be so focused in the clouds that you miss how God is with you now. I am trying to do both of these things. And as I've hoped for a future in which we gather again in person, I've had a scene playing and replaying in my imagination this last week. I picture us all back in our church building. Everyone's in their favorite pew, and we're all so happy to be together in person again. And then I imagine Jesus walking into such a gathering and saying, "Don't you know I've been with you all along?" I'm not going to stop looking forward to when we can gather in person again, but what I needed to hear this week from our gospel was Jesus' question to Philip. Haven't I been with you all along? I needed to hear this news that Christ is present with each of us now, even when we cannot be present with each other. He's been with us all along, whether we've been staying home or going to work essential jobs. Jesus is with us. He went ahead of us to prepare a place for each of us. He's with us now, in whatever places we find ourselves. His word to us is the same thing he told the disciples long ago. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. Sisters and brothers, let us keep our eyes and ears open to this promise, observing how it's being fulfilled right now all around us, and looking forward to what it means for our future hopes. Amen.